My uncle became a billionaire off my parents' money. And he did it by hiding behind my cerebral palsy. For years, he used my disability as a shield. He signed documents in my name, stole companies my father built, took over mansions my parents bought. By the time I turned 18, he'd moved over $700 million into businesses under his name. Everyone called him self-made. They called me poor thing. They thought I couldn't read, couldn't understand, couldn't fight back. They were wrong. Because the day I finally learned to read, I found my name in the middle of a fraud he thought I'd never see. And that's when I stopped being his disabled niece and became his worst nightmare. My name is Ava Carter. I was born with cerebral palsy. That means my muscles don't respond like everyone else's. My speech is slower. My hands shake. Sometimes just holding a pen feels like lifting a brick. But I want you to hear this right now, before anything else. Being disabled doesn't mean being stupid. It doesn't mean being easy to trick. It doesn't mean you don't feel betrayal the same way anybody else does. My story is about family betrayal, disability being used as a weapon, and how I turned the one thing they underestimated into the thing that destroyed them. This is how my uncle stole almost everything my parents left behind, and how I took it back. Before the betrayal. My earliest memories of my parents are full of light. My mom, Lydia, smelled like vanilla and jasmine. She would lean over my wheelchair and tuck my hair behind my ear with the softest hands. My dad, Michael Carter, had big, warm hands that always felt steady. When he pushed my wheelchair, I never felt like I was being pushed around. I felt like I was gliding. We lived in what everyone else called a mansion, but to me, it was just home. A long driveway lined with trees, a fountain in front with lights that changed color at night, 4 living rooms. 4. I used to get lost in my own house. My dad was a businessman, real estate, logistics, investments. My mom helped run some of the charitable projects. They worked hard, but they were careful about one thing. They never made me feel like a burden. Yes, I had cerebral palsy. I couldn't run around like other kids, couldn't write fast, couldn't just jump on a bike and go. But they never called me less. I was their firstborn. I was their heart. Then, one regular day, they left for a weekend business trip. And they never came back. The night they died, the house got cold. Not in temperature, in feeling. Relatives filled our living room. Black clothes. Whispered voices. My younger brother Ethan, who was 9, sat stone-faced on the couch. My baby sister Mia, just 5, buried her face in my lap and cried until her body shook. "You need to be strong, Ava," someone told me. I just stared at the front door, waiting for my parents to walk in and say, "We're home." It was all a big mistake. That never happened. That's when Uncle Richard stepped in. He was my dad's younger brother. The cool uncle. The one with nice shoes, a smooth voice, and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. At the funeral, he pushed my wheelchair himself and stood close, like he was shielding me from the world. "I'm here for you now," he whispered in my ear. "I'll take care of everything. You don't have to worry about anything, okay?" Everyone praised him. What a good man. Stepping up like a father. Those kids are so lucky to have him. But while they were applauding, something else was happening behind closed doors. About a year after my parents died, 2 men in suits came to the house. I learned later they were from my parents' law firm. I remember sitting at the top of the staircase in my wheelchair. Uncle Richard had parked me there because, in his words, "You can see everything from up here, sweetheart." He didn't realize I could hear everything too. One of the lawyers, a tall man with gray at his temples, spoke up. "Mr. Carter, we're here for the formal reading of Michael and Lydia's will. Legally, their eldest child, Ava, must be represented." Uncle Richard sounded annoyed. "She's not in a condition to understand all that. She has cerebral palsy. This would just confuse her." The lawyer's voice stayed calm. "Sir, disability does not erase her legal rights. She's the primary heir." Primary heir. Those 2 words stuck in my brain like nails. Uncle Richard eventually wheeled me into my dad's old office. Papers were spread across the desk. The air smelled like leather and dust and something else, something tense. I sat there silently while they talked over me. Every time the lawyer tried to talk directly to me, my uncle cut in. She doesn't process information well. She gets overwhelmed. She trusts me to handle everything. I didn't understand the legal language then, but I understood tone. I understood that when my name appeared on paper, my uncle's voice got tighter. I understood that when they mentioned assets, properties, and shares, his hands clenched just a bit. Later, he wheeled me out, leaned down, and smiled like nothing had just happened. It's boring paperwork, Ava. Just legal stuff. All you need to know is, I'm in charge now. I'll protect what your parents left. I smiled weakly. I didn't have the words at the time, but my instincts whispered. Something's not right. Here's the strange part. After my parents died, we didn't lose everything. We got richer. But only one person seemed to be enjoying it. New cars appeared in the driveway. The house was renovated, marble floors, a new security gate, big glass windows. Our uncle started business trips to New York, Miami, overseas. He began showing up in news articles. Rising real estate star. Self-made entrepreneur. The man who built an empire from the ground up. Whenever Ethan asked questions, and he always did, the answer was the same. Uncle, what happened to Dad's companies? Where's Mom's charity fund? What about the waterfront property Dad just finished? Uncle Richard would sigh dramatically. You kids don't understand. Your father left debts. I worked day and night to survive, to keep this roof over your head. You should be grateful. He always added that part. You should be grateful. He said it at dinner. He said it in front of guests. He said it whenever Ethan pushed too hard. Mia coped by getting smaller. Quieter. She stopped asking anything. We all learned the unspoken rule. We had food, clothes, and a mansion to live in. So, we weren't allowed to question how those things were being paid for. Meanwhile, I sat in my wheelchair, watching him grow into a billionaire off a network of companies. And every time someone asked him how he started, he'd say, I had nothing. I built everything myself. Nothing. Except my parents' businesses. Our inheritance. And a niece with cerebral palsy he thought would never talk back. My disability made everything slower. Walking? Hard. Writing? Hard. Talking when I'm stressed? Very hard. But my mind was always awake. My uncle treated me like I was mentally fragile. Like I was permanently stuck at 5 years old. Then Grace entered my life. She was a rehab therapist hired to help with my mobility and daily routines. Not family. Not chosen by him personally, she came through a center. She was patient, but not patronizing. Tough, but kind. One afternoon, while helping me with some stretches, she asked, Ava, do you want to learn anything new? A hobby? Art, maybe? Reading? Reading. That word switched something on. No one ever asked me that, I said slowly. She looked at me with gentle surprise. Do you want to learn to read? I nodded. It was not easy. Actually, it was brutal. My hands shook holding books. My eyes got tired quickly. Saying words out loud took time. But every word I learned felt like a key. A key to something other people assumed I'd never open. Grace was consistent. She didn't treat me like a charity project. She treated me like a student. Day after day, year after year, the letters stopped being random. Sentences started making sense. I started reading restaurant menus, recipes, subtitles on TV. And then, one day, I realized I could read full pages by myself. I cried that night. Not because I was sad, but because I suddenly had access to something my uncle never meant for me to have. Information. The day everything changed. It didn't look dramatic. No thunder. No big fight. Just my uncle on the phone in the dining room, pacing back and forth, talking loudly about a deal. He had documents spread across the table. Ava, just stay there a second. I'll be right back, he said, rushing off to take a call in another room. He left the papers behind. Old me would have sat still, staring into space. New me rolled forward. My palms were sweaty as I dragged one of the contracts closer. The heading read, Transfer of Assets, Carter Holdings Trust. I started reading line by shaky line. In accordance with the authority vested in the acting guardian and trustee of the estate of Michael and Lydia Carter, on behalf of the primary beneficiary, Ava Carter. I froze. There it was. My name. In the middle of a document no one had ever shown me. I kept going. There was language about restructuring, consolidating businesses, transferring controlling shares to Richard Carter, acting trustee. The more I read, the sicker I felt. Every paragraph used the same justifications. Due to disabled state of the primary heir, in the best interest of disabled beneficiary, limited capacity to manage legal affairs due to cerebral palsy. My disability wasn't just a medical condition anymore. It was a legal excuse, written into black ink, to move assets into my uncle's name. I flipped through more pages. Property after property. Company after company. Shares, accounts, holdings. All slowly drifting from Carter family to Richard Carter, trustee and owner. The number being moved over the years? Hundreds of millions. $700 million. Built by my parents. Stolen, one signature at a time. I heard my uncle's footsteps coming back. I quickly slid the paper back into the pile and rolled myself away a bit. He walked in smiling, eyes still on his phone. He didn't know that in the time it took him to take one call, everything had changed. Because now I didn't just suspect something was wrong. I knew. I could have exploded right then. I could have screamed at him, demanded answers, called him a thief. But he had the power. The money. The connections. All I had was a diagnosis, a wheelchair, and a growing ability to read. So, I stayed quiet. That was the day I became dangerous. I started paying attention in a way I never had before. I watched which envelopes he locked away. I noted which documents he signed for me. I asked gentle questions. Uncle, what does trustee mean? Why is my name here? What's a beneficiary? He laughed every time. You don't need to worry about that. Trustee just means I'm taking care of it for you. Beneficiary means you benefit. See? I'm doing this for you. I smiled. Then waited for him to leave the room and wrote the words down in a notebook with shaky letters. Grace helped me scan papers when I accidentally brought them to our sessions. She thought I was just curious. I didn't tell her everything yet. I didn't want to put her in danger. Over time, I built a small digital folder. Contracts, bank printouts I managed to glimpse and copy, emails printed and left lying around. The numbers kept adding up. 5 million here. 10 million there. Properties sold for debt. Debts that didn't fully match what my parents had actually owed. He wasn't just surviving off my parents' estate. He was building an empire. And the legal shield he used? Me. Once I turned 17, I decided it was time to bring in someone who actually knew the law. I remembered that lawyer from the early days, the one who insisted I had a right to be present. His name was Mark Ellison. One night, when my uncle was away on another business trip, I sent a slow, careful email. Dear Mr. Ellison, my name is Ava Carter. I am Michael and Lydia's eldest child. I have cerebral palsy. I've recently learned to read and write on my own. I think there's something wrong with the way my parents' estate has been handled. Could I see the original will? I expected silence. Instead, he replied the next day. Ava, I remember you. I'm so glad you reached out. Yes, we can arrange a meeting. And for the record, you have every right to see your parents' will. I told my siblings for the first time what I'd been finding. Ethan was furious. Mia was shaking, but her eyes were sharp. We're coming with you, Ethan said. We met at Mark's office. The building smelled like coffee and paper. People in suits walked by us, some giving me pitying looks, others nodding respectfully. In a conference room, Mark placed a thick file on the table in front of us. This is your parents' original will, he said, his voice steady. The one they signed before their accident. I opened it with trembling hands. I read every line slowly, carefully. They left the mansion to all three of us, equally. They left shares in my dad's companies to us, divided fairly. They set up a trust fund in my name specifically for my medical needs and independent living. They named Uncle Richard as a temporary guardian and trustee, but only until we turned 18 or were capable of managing things ourselves. Temporary. Guardian. Trustee. Not owner. Not beneficiary. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely see the words. Mark rubbed his forehead and sighed. Years after your parents died, your uncle came to us with documents, Amendments that he claimed you had all agreed to. Ones that gave him much more control. At the time, we had no reason to doubt him. We never signed anything, Ethan said through gritted teeth. Mark nodded slowly. I believe you. And from what you've sent me, it looks like your uncle has been using your disability, Ava, as justification to do whatever he wants. I felt anger, yes. But more than that, I felt clarity. Back home, the three of us sat in my room with the door locked. I laid out everything. The contracts I found, the signatures, the wording about my disabled state, the original will, and how different it was from what we'd been told. Ethan started pacing, one hand in his hair, eyes full of rage. All those times he used your condition as an excuse, Ethan said. All those lectures about how lucky we are. He wasn't protecting us. He was protecting himself. Mia's eyes were glossy, but there was steel underneath. So everything, she whispered, the cars, the renovations, the trips, that was supposed to be our future. Not his trophy. I don't care about the cars, I said quietly. I care that he used me. Used my disability. He wrote it into contracts like I was some broken object he needed to control. We didn't sleep that night. We sat together, side by side, the three of us for the first time truly on the same page. By sunrise, we had made a decision. We weren't going to ask for favors or negotiations. We were going to take legal action. Mark helped us file a civil lawsuit. We sued Uncle Richard for fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, misappropriation of estate assets, exploiting a disabled beneficiary. We demanded a full forensic audit of his company's restoration of stolen assets, court supervision over our family trust. When he got served, he lost his mind. The calls started. How dare you do this to me? I raised you. I fed you. You'd be on the street without me. You're being manipulated. You don't understand business. Then he switched to guilt. After everything I sacrificed, Ava, this is what you do? Because some lawyer filled your head. You know you can't handle all this. Why are you letting them use you like this? I listened. Then I hung up. For once, he was the one who didn't have control over the conversation. In court, his lawyers tried to paint him as a hero. He stepped in when these children were orphaned. He made sound business decisions to protect them from debt. His niece's condition made it necessary for him to assume complete control. They kept saying it. Because of her cerebral palsy. Due to her limited capacity. Given her disability. The first time, it made my stomach twist. By the 10th time, it made me furious. The day I took the stand, my legs felt heavier than usual. I rolled my wheelchair up to the witness box. The bailiff helped me get into position, adjusted the microphone so it was close to my lips. The courtroom was full. Friends. Strangers. Reporters. Even relatives who hadn't called once since my parents died. I looked up and saw my uncle at the defense table, wearing a suit that probably cost more than some people's cars. For the first time, he wouldn't meet my eyes. Our lawyer, Mark, asked the question slowly, giving me space to speak. Ava, can you tell the court, in your own words, what cerebral palsy is to you? I took a breath. It means my muscles don't do what I want, I said. It means I have trouble walking and writing. It means I talk slower when I'm stressed. But it does not mean my mind doesn't work. It doesn't mean I can't understand right from wrong, or read, or decide what I want. What did your uncle tell you about your parents' will? I swallowed. He said there wasn't much. That my parents left debts. He said he was saving us by taking care of everything. He never showed me a single document. He used my disability as a reason to keep me out of every decision. Mark nodded. And how did you discover that wasn't true? I learned to read, I said simply. And when he left some papers on the table one day, I read them. I saw my name in contracts I never saw before. And I saw that my disability was written into them as a reason to move money and property into his name. I turned, slowly, to look at the judge. I want to make something clear, I said, my voice shaking but loud enough. I may need help to dress or shower. I may need a wheelchair to get around. But I am not invisible. I am not stupid. Being disabled does not give anyone the right to steal my life. For the first time, the courtroom was completely silent. Even my uncle looked small. We weren't just relying on my testimony. We had The original will, clearly laying out my parents' wishes. The so-called amendments with signatures that didn't match, according to a forensic handwriting expert. A money trail showing how, year after year, assets were transferred from accounts meant for us into companies fully controlled by my uncle. Witnesses from former employees to old friends of my parents, who remembered them saying, "We're making sure the kids are taken care of." The forensic accountant went through account statements on a big screen. Lines, charts, arrows, numbers. Over $700 million worth of assets had been moved. Properties sold under shady terms. Company shares reassigned. Trust funds drained into consulting fees to his own firms. The pattern was clear. Every time my uncle took care of something, we lost something. On the day of judgment, I wore a simple dark dress and the necklace my mother gave me when I was 10. My siblings sat on either side of me, Ethan stiff and focused, Mia holding my hand. The judge read from a prepared statement. After reviewing the evidence presented, this court finds that Richard Carter abused his position as guardian and trustee of the estate of Michael and Lydia Carter. He repeatedly used the eldest heir's documented disability as a justification to exclude her from decision-making, misrepresent her capacity, and consolidate control of assets for personal gain. Furthermore, the court is satisfied that numerous transfers and amendments were fraudulent in nature, including but not limited to forged signatures on key documents. My heart was pounding in my ears. The court hereby orders a full forensic audit of Richard Carter's business enterprises, freezing of key accounts and assets pending distribution, restitution of misappropriated funds and properties into a court-supervised family trust in the names of Ava, Ethan, and Mia Carter. Referral of this case to the district attorney for possible criminal charges related to fraud, forgery, and exploitation of a disabled person. In simpler language, he was caught, stripped, exposed. A man who spent years being called a self-made billionaire was now legally recognized as what he really was: a thief who used his disabled niece as cover. Aftermath and healing. People think that when you win a case like this, everything is suddenly okay. It's not. My parents are still gone. The years of being controlled and lied to, they're not coming back. The trauma of knowing someone who tucked you into bed also wrote you into contracts as a justification to erase you, that doesn't vanish overnight. But something important changed. We weren't powerless anymore. The mansion was legally confirmed as ours, not his. The businesses my father built were no longer just bullet points on my uncle's success story. The trust for my medical needs is now overseen by an independent trustee, with me involved in decisions. Ethan is now studying finance and law, determined to help other families who've been exploited. Mia is in therapy, working through the fear and confusion of our childhood, and she started volunteering with kids who've lost parents. And me? I speak. I work with disability advocacy groups. I tell my story to anyone who needs to hear it. Lawyers who think disabled clients don't understand. Families who think it's fine to handle everything without including the disabled child. People who assume that if you can't walk or talk like them, you're not capable of owning anything. I tell them, never confuse physical disability with lack of intelligence. And never, ever assume silence means consent. If you're still listening, maybe you relate to some piece of this. Maybe you're disabled. Maybe you have a disabled child, sibling, cousin. Maybe you felt people talk around you, over you, about you, instead of to you. Or maybe you've seen money and power twist people into something ugly. Here's what I want you to take from my story. Disability is not a free pass for others to control you. Family doesn't mean trustworthy by default, and the paper people hope you'll never be able to read? Sometimes that's exactly where you'll find your power. My uncle used my condition as his excuse to build a $100 million empire. But in the end, the thing he underestimated: my ability to learn, to read, to think. That's what brought his empire down. My name is Ava Carter. I have cerebral palsy. And I am not your shield, your excuse, or your victim. I am the reason the truth came out. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And never, ever let anyone tell you what you're capable of, just because of how you move.